Now, guys, I know this is just a bit short, but Marius will be here to answer any questions, because the one thing we have to do is you must read the Loban case and the decision. Points 1 to 7. I can't remember which page it is on, but that is the crux of where the Human Rights Court, 12 of 14 judges, made a unanimous decision. And it's those articles which we can translate into the United Nations for us, which is Mike and Marius have already been bashing that out together. Sorry, Steve, you might still be busy for a bit longer. He'll also answer any of your questions. But before we go too much further, I'd like to ask Dave and Ali to come up, because we have a... Okay, guys. We have... Marius, you better come up too, bro. One of the things as an organisation that I see and many of our other people see is that it is really difficult when you're David and you're taking on Goliath. And the all-of-government approach is of 13 ministries and all the bureaucrats and all our taxpayers' money being used against us to try and get justice is huge. And so we must recognise those people that fight for us. And I was very honoured recently to give out an award to a beautiful human being who just inspires the pants off me. She stood down the New Zealand police. She stood down Oranga Tamariki. She stood down the District Health Board in Hastings to stop that uplift of that poor young child, of that poor young mother who, for God's sake, she had just given birth. And they were trying to take this child off her. And her name was Jean Tahuia, and we awarded her Citizen of the Year for Families for Justice. But today, we'd like to recognise Marius, that his nomination for a Peace Prize might come to fruition. And we would like to award him Families for Justice International Human Rights Defender of the Year, for his work to try and help save the children. And I want to come and see that in a nice place. And I'm not coming to Norway in winter, ever. All right, now, thank you very much. The next group of people, you know, I was lucky to meet this fella. He reminds me, when you look at him, like a pussycat. Don't bite him. I've watched him roar, and he took on a guy who may actually become our Minister of Justice in the future. And he roared. And I was so proud of this guy when we were fighting for a family. We haven't been successful, but we haven't given up, and we're on the path, and we will win because we're right. And during that process, I heard about the Citizens Commission on Human Rights. And as I had a bit of a distrust of the New Zealand state, I wasn't too keen to get too friendly with the New Zealand Human Rights Commission, because they're actually paid for by the state. And so you kind of wonder where that all ends, you know, is it just in a way to appease people or what? But these people do this for no other reason than it's the right thing to do. And through this journey I discovered Mr. Steve Cook and a man called Victor. Sorry, Green. Sorry, Steve. And through that I met one of the victims at the Royal Commission for Sexual Abuse. His name's Paul. We discovered that we actually used to work together. And that man's determination to get justice as a victim should inspire every New Zealander. Because one of the things as New Zealanders, we don't like the underarm bowl. We expect a fair deal. And this group of people didn't get a fair deal. And not just that, he didn't just do it for himself. He knew that he had to fight for the others that couldn't. And some of them have passed away now. And as a New Zealander, we're watching our government do this kind of stuff and cover it up. And we watch Crown Law, who should be promoting justice, who in fact operate on a win at all costs, 20 million I think, wasn't it? To try and stop New Zealanders getting a fair deal in justice. And this is a warning to those lawyers out there in the New Zealand Law Society. You better buck your ideas up, because the citizens have had enough. You're using our taxpayers' money to abuse us. And it's an unacceptable behaviour that's creeping through the state. And I don't like it. And I don't know where you guys come from, but it seems really ridiculous that it's our money using to punish us. So without any further ado, I'd like to ask Paul to come up here, and Mike. And I'd like Paul to award, this is Paul, to award this to Mike Ferris, Steve, Green and Victor. And this is the New Zealand Families for Justice Human Rights Defender of the year 2020. And it is my greatest pleasure that we can do this very small thing as a community for these three wonderful human beings that are not lawyers, that won in the United Nations for torture of our children. Love the t-shirts.
Okay, Steve, I'll let you talk first. You know, those words we used, we made it happen.
We made it happen, yes. I'd like to thank you guys for this. It's really nice to be like honoured in this way. The fight for justice is usually a pretty lonely battle, as you would know. It's not something you do for I don't know, credibility or something, an award or something like that, but it's very important that the work gets done, because the people who you're doing it for is what matters the most. And often, you know, they're not even around. You know, a lot of people that when Paul and I went up to United Nations, it was not just done for what Paul's case was. It was all the others that couldn't make it and all the others that had passed on that weren't even alive. So it's and it's not just for that as well, it's also for what is it going to do for the future of the, you know, the communities and the families that are not born yet. You know, it's the future generations that we do these things for. And you know, that's the importance of this work. It's like Marius was saying, it's like it's so vital that this gets done, and I'm actually really glad that you guys have come. You know, you've got Marius out here, because there is a lot of similarities there. I'm glad that Mike's taken over the helm now and forwarding this on. So yeah, thanks again, and you guys. And also it's Haki. I'd like to acknowledge Haki in the background there. He's from the Reikeras cases. He was a little boy that wrote in Niuean to his grandmum that, you know, I'm being harmed, I'm being shocked, and I don't like it. And he managed to get this letter out of the institution that would not let these letters go out. And you know, he had to do it with a smiley face. Made it look positive, you know, but it was, it had the intent there, and then investigation started from that time onwards, so it did the job, that's right, yeah.
behalf of the Citizens Commission on Human Rights, we thank the Families for Justice for this award. It's actually really special. It's a really special award because it's like from team to team, and I think that's important. Our role and our focus is on the abuse of human rights in the field of mental health. But mental health is so intertwined with child welfare and child services. Everybody that goes into that system at some point is interviewed by a psychologist or a psychiatrist. They're evaluating your life. They're saying that you are not fit, in so many cases, not fit to look after your own children. They work with an agenda. We know that psychologists get upwards of $5,000 to $10,000 per interview. That's a lot of stash for those people who essentially are ignoring your human rights. With the Lake Alice cases, they were children who were taken by the state. Right? They were in the state care and they were being tortured. And the state, for 40 years, basically was not going to seek any kind of real justice for all those individuals. And there were hundreds of them. They were willing to pay out money, but they weren't willing to hold the people who were torturing accountable. And that was our fight. That was Paul's fight. It was Victor's fight, because Victor was there from the very beginning. And we took it to the United Nations over a period of years, and finally with a complaint that was upheld in December of last year. And they found New Zealand guilty of torture, and they have to now re-examine those cases. The police have got to do their job properly, and the latest news just from the last week is that the police are now re-examining this case. They've opened it up again on the strength of our complaint and the strength of the United Nations. But that's huge. The fact that none of us are lawyers is also significant, because it actually says that anybody can do this. You don't have to be a Queen's Counsel lawyer to figure out how to lay a complaint with the United Nations. You have to do it right. And you have to have your facts straight, and we know we can make it work. And I would like to work with Steve and any others who want to put forward cases to the UN and help them to represent what's happening in child services here in New Zealand. Because the UN should find out about this, and as Marius said, we need to take it outside of the country in order to bring it, to raise the profile of the abuse. And just doing that, we will get a really good case out of this, one that we can take all the way to the UN, and in the same way push it through to a win. I think we can do that. So that's kind of where we're coming from. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. One of the things that was touched upon here, which I'd just like to mention, and that when I started out on this quest, if you like, many years ago, I spoke with a few people who should know more than me and should do more, some former staff members of a hospital. Spoke with several of those, and the first question they asked me was really, why are you doing this? Because they sort of thought, well, you know, children who might be a bit troublesome or difficult to deal with should just be dealt with somehow. And why am I trying to seek some justice for them? And why am I doing what I'm doing? And one of the big advantages of being a volunteer is I don't have an agenda only out of what I'm doing, and this has helped me in the questions that I've had to ask people, because they know that I'm not out to screw them in any way, and that's been a big help just by being a volunteer. It's an extremely difficult area to deal with, what we've dealt with, and when I put the complaint together to start with, I did the research on it, and I thought we got a chance here. So I went over this with Mike Ferris, and I said, I want you to have a look at this, and he had a good look at it, and we agreed there's a good chance of some success. So that's when we put the complaint to the United Nations. We got Paul's okay to do that, because in these situations you have to get permission. If you're going to talk about someone, you've got to get permission. But the fight's not over yet, but it was just very gratifying to know that a group of people overseas sort of saw what we were trying to do and made a favourable decision. We weren't sure how that was going to go, because as it's been touched on here, Crown Law, who by our taxpayer dollars put up an enormous opposition to what we were trying to do, but we weren't put off by that, and I don't think anybody should be put off by a thing like that. But they basically had 450 pages of countering information to the complaint that we put up. It's called the bundle, and as I say, there's over 450 pages of that, and when we read through that, we weren't fazed by it, but we knew we had to say something about it, so we did. And then it was good to know the United Nations took our view and made the finding that it did. But as I say, being a volunteer does help. I think a couple of lawyers have shouted at me lunch sometimes, and that's been nice. But when you're in a game that you're not out to make money, people appreciate that, and don't have an agenda, that you're not working for the government or anything like that. People can appreciate that, not straight away, but they do. So thanks very much for this award. It means a lot to us in CCHR, more than you realise. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for coming everybody. My name is Paul Zenfeld. A lot of you will know me. Thanks to meeting Victor many years ago, we started right from the start, and I was telling my story and telling the story of others, and the first thing that we were fighting was, one, no one believes us. Two, it didn't happen. Three, we told the truth. It didn't seem anyone else was doing it. Anyway, now this UN resolution has come, we've smashed the whole lot of them. The government's now listening. Since December, I've had people ring me up and tell me, like, Grant Cameron, we done the first round. How did you do it? What lawyer did you use? Right? We've had Human Rights Commissioner David Rutherford ring me up and say, Paul, how did you do it? How did you guys do this? What lawyer did you use? None. This is Kiwi ingenuity at its best. Simple, brief, a lot of patience, but we've done the job. You'll see things in the future happening, but we are the trailblazers. Someone had to do it, and it's done. So enjoy what you see in the future. There you go.